for the real fundamental division, you need to have this kind of populistic sense. Mao understood the distinction between primary and secondary contradictions. The primary contradiction is the class struggle and all that stuff, we know. But there's also a secondary contradiction, if you want, which is between the people and the establishment, right? Without an acute sense of this contradiction, there would be no revolution in Russia, because there would be no land reform. The Bolsheviks would have simply sided with the Mensheviks and allied with the established bourgeoisie instead of the anti-establishment bourgeoisie that existed in the countryside and was hungry for land. And I don't even have to mention the experience of China because it's self-evident. But you get my point. And every corresponding successful revolution in history was based in an acute sense of the two. I mean, this is even a kind of limited way of putting it, but if you're a basic Maoist, you should understand the primary and the secondary contradiction. They're two co-temporal and yet not the same thing. If you, for example, if you substitute sense of the secondary contradiction for the primary contradiction, you are going to inevitably side with the establishment. Think about it. I'm in a university and I need theory in order to understand the concept of class struggle, the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie. I'm an academic, right? I require theory in order to come to these conclusions about class struggle that I found in the university or the academy, right? How did I arrive at that position? Through university, through the institution, through the establishment. Inevitably, if I base my entire reality on this reflexivity, I'm going to resent people who don't have access to this knowledge or simply don't find it commonsensical or have no reason to accept it. I'm going to side with the establishment and say, everyone's stupid except me. I have this insight into the truth and no one else does. But on the other hand, if you have an acute sense of the secondary contradiction, you'll be able to see that very same, the object of the primary contradiction, which you have called the class struggle, is actually the same object as the secondary contradiction. It's just manifesting itself in a different way, a way that's not reducible to the terms of its articulation and thought, something that's happening in actual reality under your fucking nose. The revolution is underway under your fucking nose. There's a huge anti-establishment sentiment. There's the establishment is crumbling by this tsunami of the people that's coming, right? These things are happening. It's just that because the two contradictions are estranged from one another, it's not clear. But that's the significance of Maoism, was to make this precisely clear. This is why Mao, for the first time, allowed the millions, hundreds of millions of people who were considered outside of civilization, outside of enlightenment, to have some kind of recognition. You know, there was an article recently that was like, this Chinese strategy from Mao was to find a base in the countryside to overthrow the cities. And they said, China's trying to do the same now. Mao did the same thing with his international perspective. He's trying to get all of the rural countries against the urban center of the first world, and so on and so on. It's interesting, you know?